Prince William calls for an end to the violent and corrupt trade in ivory. The mixed messages must end, he said. Also there, the Environment Secretary, who yesterday banned the sale of ivory, but only if it was less than 70 years old.
I'm not prepared to explain to our children why we lost this battle when we had the tools to win it.
Also this lunchtime.
That's scrumptious. It really is lovely.
But she doesn't fancy Bake Off under new management. Mary Berry joins Mel and Sue in quitting the show. Paul sticks with it on Channel 4. Claims 1,000 women are dying from breast cancer because of a row over who pays for a cheap and effective treatment. And
the more people who believe that we can cure all diseases in our children's lifetime, the more likely we are to get our governments to invest in it.
How parenthood prompted the founder of Facebook to put his money where his mouth is to help all children.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alistair Stewart.
Good afternoon. Prince William said the world had a moral duty to end this violent and corrupt trade in ivory, a symbol of destruction, not luxury. There to hear it, the Environment Secretary, Andrea Leadsom, who yesterday said the government would ban the trade in ivory, but only if it was less than 70 years old. The ambition of the conservationists, including Prince William, is to put an end to all trade in ivory. He said 1 million elephants were alive when he was born. It was just a third of that number when Princess Charlotte was born just over a year ago. Our political correspondent Paul Brand heard the Prince speak.
One of these animals is killed every 15 minutes in the wild. Their lives not considered as precious as the ivory products still traded for huge profit.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
So ahead of an international conference tomorrow aimed at saving endangered species, today the Duke of Cambridge said the only hope for the elephant is to finally stop all trade of their tusks.
When I was born, there were 1 million elephants roaming Africa. By the time my daughter Charlotte was born last year, the numbers of savannah elephants had crashed to just 350,000. And at the current pace of illegal poaching, when Charlotte turns 25, the African elephant will be gone from the wild. We have the opportunity to end, once and for all, the mixed messages we have sent for too long about the value and desirability of wildlife products. We have the chance to say that ivory is a symbol of destruction, not of luxury, and not something that anyone needs to buy or sell.
The elephant's an animal that's long been close to the Prince's heart. He spoke exclusively to ITV News earlier this year about his personal campaign to save them.
It would be incredibly devastating for humanity itself when we have sat back and we've lost something that we've been responsible for.
The main threat is from trade in China and Asia, where ivory is a status symbol. But now the British government's promising to tighten the law here too. It's already illegal to sell ivory in the UK from an elephant killed after 1947. But now traders will actually need proof it's as old as they claim it is. Otherwise, the ivory could be confiscated and destroyed.
What we're trying to do is to send a very clear signal to those people who are evilly and cruelly killing elephants for gain today and are running the risk of wiping out this iconic species, that has to stop.
The government's manifesto promise was to ban the sale of all ivory. It claims this is one step towards that. Tomorrow it hopes other countries will follow and agree this animal is far more valuable than anything its ivory can produce. Paul Brand, ITV News.
Well, joining me now from inside the Shard in central London is the chef and environmental campaigner Hugh Fernley-Whittingstall, and here in the studio with me, Max Rutherston, who is an antiques dealer. Hugh, let me come to you first, if I may. Won't that post-1947 ban that Mrs. Leadsom was just talking about, I mean, in effect, to all intents and purposes, do the trick?
I don't think it will. It isn't enough. And it isn't really any kind of a ban. It's really tightening up a couple of loopholes that exist around post-1947 ivory anyway. Pre-1947 ivory is a big part of the problem, and there's been some complacency in both the trade and perhaps by the ministry. Yesterday, there was actually a statement on the announcement. The only clear statement on the DEFRA announcement was that trade in pre-1947 ivory will not be affected, and it read almost
All
like
right,
a
Hugh,
document
let me bring Max in as well.
Let
Let me bring Max in on that point.
Sure.
Complacency in the trade. You care about these things as well?
We do care about these things. I think, before anything else, I would like to say, on behalf of everybody I know who deals legitimately in ivory, in old ivory, that the majority of us love elephants as everybody else, and that we are appalled by the idea that elephants are killed for ivory. I personally see, or have seen in the shops, the sort of things that are perpetrated, that are made out of poached ivory. They are revolting. They're an insult to the dead
So
animal.
you're on his side?
In terms of trying to ban poaching, absolutely. But nobody has demonstrated to me a real link between old ivory and the poaching.
All right, Hugh, I don't know if you caught that. I hope you did. Demonstrate, if you will, to Max, that link.
Well, I'm holding a piece of ivory in my hand that we investigated for the series we made for BBC One that was being sold as pre-1947. We identified 9 pieces that we were a little suspicious of. We had them all tested by radiocarbon dating, and it turned out that 4 out of 9 of them were actually from the 70s or 80s. So that's the first point. It's often very hard to tell. The second point is even if it is pre-1947, there is a connection with the killing of elephants, and that's because most of the pieces being bought up from the English trade, well, maybe not most, but very many of them, and we've got evidence of this in our programme, are finding their way to the Asian market, where they sit on the shelves, and they stimulate the trade, and they help provide cover from poached ivory from elephants that have been recently killed in Africa.
Let me put the final point to you there, Max, because I heard very clearly, as did he, that, as it were, your heart is on the right side in this matter. But he's just made the killer point. Whatever you guys do, China and Asia is still going to be alive and well, both for antiques and, more importantly, for medication. It's a pipe dream.
I think the problem is that all the efforts to try and stamp out a trade have actually not stopped the poaching. And I believe very firmly, we could probably argue till the cows come home about it, but I feel very, very strongly that everything needs to be focused on protecting the elephant at source. It's no good trying to chase the ivory later and prove whether it was carved before or after 1947. You need to stop the poaching in Africa.
OK. Max and Hugh, thank you both very much indeed for joining us this lunchtime. Now, it's emerged that an inquiry into alleged abuse by British troops serving in Afghanistan has almost doubled in size. An independent policing unit investigating the allegations has received more than 500 complaints from between 2005 and 2013. But the investigations have been criticised by some as damaging to the armed forces. Our political correspondent, Libby Wiener, is in Westminster for us now. Libby, what's the scope of these allegations?
Well, Alistair, until now we knew very little about this investigation, but we did know that the Prime Minister had been concerned about the number of allegations against British soldiers who had served in Iraq. She this morning met the Chief of the Defence Staff, Air Chief Marshal Sir Stuart Peach, at the Ministry of Defence, and she's expected to raise the issue of allegations of abuse both against soldiers who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. She told reporters earlier this week that the government needed to be careful that there wasn't an industry of vexatious allegations. So I think it's pretty clear where her sympathies lie. Looking at the figures, they are pretty startling. Operation Northmore, looking at allegations of abuse in Afghanistan, there are 550 allegations being investigated involving 157 Afghans. That brings the total of allegations of abuse being investigated following the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan to 2,000. Now, a member of the Defence Select Committee, Johnny Mercer, spoke to us this morning, and he says he's extremely concerned as to what this is doing to morale within the British Armed Forces.
We need to close that gap between what we say we are doing and what we are actually doing to look after those going through these investigations. There's absolutely no doubt that investigations backed up by credible evidence must be investigated, but we stand by our soldiers. We do not hang them out to dry.
Well, the government today has said that this is a matter for the Royal Military Police and the Ministry of Defence can't interfere, but it does say that obviously the Ministry of Defence will stand up for defence personnel wherever that is needed.
Libby, thank you. The Syrian president has this lunchtime dismissed America's claims that Russian or Syrian planes were to blame for a deadly attack on an aid convoy on Monday. President Assad said the accusation had no credibility and was lies. He also pointed the finger at the United States for its intentional airstrike on Syrian troops just a few days earlier. Well, Dan Rivers joins me live now. This is a story that gets murkier and keeps developing.
It does. I mean, the ceasefire itself continues to break down. Overnight, there's been a further set of attacks in southern Aleppo, leaving a further 10 people dead. But the war of words over this attack on Monday continues. President Assad has unusually given an interview in English to the Associated Press, as you say, in which he flatly denies any Syrian or Russian involvement, blaming the attack instead on the rebels. Here's what he said.
It has never happened before, so why to happen now, either by the Russians or the Syrian? No, it's a claim. And regarding the claim of the White House yesterday, accusing either the Syrian or the Russian, in that regard, I would say whatever the American officials said about the conflicts in Syria in general has no credibility.
The Americans are adamant, though, that they were not responsible for the strike. In fact, they're saying there were 2 Russian jets in the area at the time. Secretary of State Kerry has been calling for a no-fly zone to try and salvage something from this ceasefire. Russia, though, is saying that there was a drone in the area, a US drone in the area. They've released surveillance footage showing that this convoy was being accompanied by rebels. So it's very difficult to really get to the truth of what happened.
Well, Dan, thank you very much. Still to come, the arguments over the breast cancer drug that costs less than 50 pence a day and could save lives. And one big like, the Facebook founder who wants to put £2 billion into curing disease. But first, they have judged cakes, pastries and breads together for 6 years, but the Great British Bake Off team is splitting up. Mary Berry has said that she too will not move with the show to Channel 4 out of loyalty to the BBC. Her fellow judge, Paul Hollywood, however, has said that the programme had been a huge part of his life and he couldn't turn his back on it. Nina Nanar on the Bake Off breakup.
With great sadness, the person leaving us this week is...
Normally, one contestant leaves a week, but in the past 7 days of Bake Off twists and turns, it's the presenters who've been departing.
Could you explain to me why you have a pile of 6?
Today, Mary Berry, undoubtedly one of the show's main ingredients, has announced that she's leaving the famous tent
30 minutes left
when the show moves to its new home on Channel 4. In a statement, she says, "My decision to stay with the BBC is out of loyalty to them, as they have nurtured me and the show that was a unique and brilliant format from day one. I'm just sad for the audience who may not be ready for change. I hope they understand my decision. Farewell to soggy bottoms."
On your marks.
And get set. Bake.
With presenters Mel Gedroych and Sue Perkins also departing, that left Paul Hollywood, and as press speculation mounted that he might be offered Top Gear to stay at the BBC, he was pictured in today's Daily Mail heading into Channel 4's offices, confirming this morning he would be moving with the show to the channel for 3 seasons.
Wheat biscuits.
On social media today, he said, "I'll be staying with the bakers in the tent where I belong," adding that Mary Berry had made the right decision for her.
Sad that it all falls apart.
Hello, Mary. You look amazing.
Mary Berry, a distinguished food writer who's published more than 70 cookery books, has been with the series since it began in 2010. Last year, The Great British Bake Off was the most watched programme on TV. Channel 4 reportedly outbid the BBC by £30 million over a 3-year period to secure the series, which is made by Love Productions. Today, left with only one of the original presenting team, Channel 4 said the show will return next year with a celebrity special. Nina Nanar, ITV News.
A former panellist on the BBC quiz show Eggheads has been arrested on suspicion of murder. CJ de Moy is being held over an alleged killing that happened more than 20 years ago in the Netherlands. He was detained at Heathrow Airport after a European warrant for his arrest was issued. Thousands of women with breast cancer are missing out on a drug which could stop the disease from spreading. Researchers claim that bisphosphonates have the potential to save 1 in 10 women at a cost of just pennies per patient per day. But as Victoria Grimes reports, they're being left on the shelf because of confusion over funding.
It's a simple tablet which costs as little as 43 pence a day, but it could help save thousands of lives. Bisphosphonates work by strengthening bone tissue, making it harder for cancer cells to survive there. They're typically used to target osteoporosis, and research has shown they can help reduce breast cancer deaths by 18% in the first 10 years after diagnosis. Some experts claim they could save as many as 1,000 lives a year. But a new study from a breast cancer charity claims around 27,000 women every year are missing out due to confusion over who funds them.
If this was a new drug delivering these kind of results, you would have the kind of company that produced the drug pushing for it to become available, and it would go through the nice process, and it would have a technology appraisal and would likely become available having these kind of results, certainly at this cost. With this treatment, it's very, very low cost. It's 43p on average per patient, which is adding in extra the clinical time required. It's got really good results. It could prevent 1 in 10 breast cancer patients dying. So we really need to look at what more could be done to make sure it's available.
In a statement, NHS England said the report of the Independent Cancer Task Force included a specific recommendation on the use of bisphosphonates. We continue to work to realise the ambitions of the report and will shortly be publishing an update on progress made. Campaigners are now calling for provision of the drugs to those eligible to be top priority. Victoria Grimes, ITV News.
And joining me live in the studio now is Dr. Susan Cleater, who's an oncologist specialising in breast cancer treatment. Bisphosphonates, let me get it right first of all. But is it really true, this claim from Breast Cancer Now, that 27,000 women are missing out in a row over who pays for what?
Essentially, yes, and I'm very grateful to Breast Cancer Now for highlighting this. It's been a big frustration for the breast cancer oncology community since the data was published, very robust data about 18 months ago, showing a definite survival benefit from these drugs. Now, they're cheap. They're actually unlicensed for this setting, but that doesn't matter. There's clear clinical benefit in the trials that have been done. And whilst we can eventually roll out high-cost drugs on a kind of wave following the licensing, there isn't a robust financial framework for providing funding for cheap drugs.
But that's the whole point, isn't it? But everything that we report on this programme is about GPs under pressure over budgets, hospitals under pressure. This is cheap and cheerful. And again, the research suggests 1,000 lives a year.
Yes, and in fact...
Who needs to get their act together?
It may actually... Well, from the financial modelling that has been done, we think it probably saves money. Yeah. So the drug improves bone health, it reduces the risk of osteoporosis, but it will save money in terms of treating metastatic breast cancer.
So are we talking about NICE? Are we talking about NHS England? Who are we talking about? Who is your cri de coeur going to?
So it hasn't yet been commissioned. It is going to be taken on by NICE, not as a specific project, but as part of the next early breast cancer guidance, but that is 2 years away. So what's happening at the moment is that it's being introduced locally, piecemeal, essentially by hospitals self-funding. And I mean, it's not zero cost, because it's an intravenous drug and we have to administer it.
We have to stop it there. I have a feeling you'll be back and we'll be talking about it again. Susan Cleater, thank you very much indeed. Victims of the Hillsborough disaster are being honoured with the freedom of the city of Liverpool today. The families of the 96 who died in or after the 1989 disaster will collect the awards this evening at a special ceremony. Specially designed scrolls and medals have been made for the day and are on display in Liverpool Town Hall. Just a few months ago, after years of campaigning for the truth, the families of the dead were finally vindicated after an inquest. Jury ruled that the victims were unlawfully killed. We'll have more on that at 6:30. And finally, as one of the richest men in the world, entrepreneur Mark Zuckerberg can spare a cool £2 billion. But But the Facebook founder is less interested in super yachts and private islands and is instead spending that money on a very noble but ambitious cause to eradicate all diseases. He and his wife, Priscilla Chan, plan to invest £2.3 billion over the next decade to try and tackle some of the world's biggest killers, including cancer, which we were just talking about, and heart disease. Suzanne Verdi now on how they'll do it.
It was the birth of their daughter Max back in December last year that spurred Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan to want to help other children. Now they've pledged more than £2 billion to fund medical research over the next decade, with the idea to rid the world of all disease.
Our aim is to bring together teams of innovative scientists and engineers to build transformational tools that unlock a new era of accelerated progress in science and health.
The hope is their act of generosity will drive governments to do more.
The more people who believe that we can cure all diseases in our children's lifetime, the more likely we are to get our governments to invest in it, and then the more likely it is to actually happen.
Mark Zuckerberg himself is estimated to be worth £43 billion, with his shares valued at around £35 billion. Last year, the couple said they'd donate 99% of the shares to charity. They're not the only multi-billionaires to give to good causes. Microsoft founder Bill Gates has pumped billions into tackling inequality around the world. Financier George Soros and business magnate Warren Buffett have also given billions to causes close to their hearts. Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla's aim to see all diseases cured, prevented or managed in the next 80 years is probably the most ambitious, though. However, the time scale of the project means the couple may not be around to see if their dream can become a reality. Suzanne Verdi, ITV News.
And that is it this lunchtime. The ITV Evening News is back at 6:30. The news where you are follows the national weather. But for now, from all of us here, bye-bye.